Instead of being against something where we have to fight against, we're lifting in our mind, even the subconscious mind, a negative image on somebody else's viewpoints. But if I'm pro peace, if I'm pro harmony, then it's about healing and finding out what common ground do we have.
Today's podcast guest is Steve Donofrio. Steve is great in communication. As an AGC speaker and a part of our AGC speaker series on the AGC Experience podcast show, we learn from Steve and a variety of his life experiences. He shares with us what he learned from being in the military during the Gulf War. He shares with us what it was like to spend 15 years in Japan as missionary. He shares the rule of harmony, mindset, being pro-positive, taking responsibility when you're wrong, taking responsibility when you make mistakes, and listening with your heart and between the lines. He says when you speak to one, you look to all. He gives us great advice on practicing proactive positivity.
My name's Travis Sims, and I am the founder and CEO of AGC Accelerated Global Connections. And this is the AGC Experience.
Justin is an Army veteran of Operation Iraqi Freedom, where he deployed in 2004. He believes the American dream of owning a home is one of the largest purchases of most people's life. It's a long process that can be frustrating, scary, and really confusing. He experienced this back when he purchased his first couple of homes, and looking back, he wishes he had a friend that would take the time to educate him on his options so he could make the best decision for his family's future. That was his driving force to get into the industry. If you're looking for an expert in Minnesota or Wisconsin that can guide you through the process of purchasing, refinancing, or renovating your current home, give Justin a call or find him on Facebook using hashtag Justin Larson Home Loans.
All right, I am super excited for today's podcast. I want to thank you, our audience, for tuning in, for listening, for coming back every Monday for a brand new podcast with absolutely amazing guests here on the AGC Experience podcast show. And thank you for hitting that subscribe button and telling others about us. We are getting listeners and watchers from all over the country and all over the world, and it is because of you that is sharing our podcast. So thank you for doing that. And today, we're super excited that I have guest star AGC speaker for our AGC Experience speaker series, part of the podcast, Steve Donofrio. And I probably messed that up, but that's okay. You're going to correct me. And you got one of those hard to pronounce names, but you've got an amazing message and you're an amazing person. And I can't wait for you to tell our audience a little bit more about you and your history and your passion and what it is you're up to. So please, Steve, introduce yourself.
Well, Travis, thank you. It's been a while since I took the stage at the AGC event, and it's good to be back hanging out with you on another platform. So thank you for giving me the chance to be here. Donofrio is kind of how you do it, but I've heard it so many ways. I have decided I don't care anymore. So we just go with Steve. Again, thank you. A little bit background, been involved in speaking in some way or another just most of my adult life. I was involved with youth work with an organization called Young Life for over 20 years, either full-time, part-time, or as a volunteer. In 2000, my family moved to Japan, where we spent time. 15 years I lived in Japan. I had my own business, few things going on, and then came back here in 2015. And when I was back here, I did a couple events similar to yours, but I was here as working with the gym and a personal trainer, a couple of networking events, and someone said, "Hey, Steve, are you a professional speaker?" And I said, "No, I'm not." And they said, "Why not?" And I thought about it, and I thought, why not? So I've kind of shifted that because the message that's kind of been on my heart since my time in the military is deeper than ever before, and it's a bigger passion. And I get a chance to now share it on platforms such as the AGC stage and then around the world. And that's kind of a little bit about where I am now, and looking forward to attacking as soon as COVID allows me to, getting back on stage and hopefully sharing some exciting messages with people around the world.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Steve. I want to ask you about your military service and your background. Thank you for serving. And is that what took you originally to Japan?
No, I was in the military just from 1989 to 93, so I'm dating myself. But when I got out, my wife and I were part of Young Life, a Christian mission organization, and that took us to Japan. We'd actually hosted a Japanese exchange student for 1 year, and Young Life said, we're starting some youth programs up in Japan and we need some help. You had a Japanese exchange student. That's good enough for us. Do you want to go? So we went, and that contract ended after a couple of years, but we loved it so much, we just stayed. I opened a business there, did some things on the side with different churches, and I was actually a wedding pastor on the weekends, and I ran a security consulting business and my fitness business on the weekdays. And that's kind of, so the military didn't bring that, but it was in the military that an experience that I had during the first Gulf War. And after the ground war had started, one of our missions for my unit I was in was after the ground war kind of stopped, we had the job of going back through some of the battlefields and double checking to make sure there was no unexploded munitions, there was nobody hiding, no booby traps had been set. It wasn't the most glamorous job, running back through death and destruction, but you know, when you're walking around your uniform, you feel really cool and really tough. And there's a lot of this pride and power, and even walking through these things. But one particular day, as I was walking through, and I don't know if you can imagine, you know, I had my uniform on, had all my gear on, covered in dust. You know, it was one of those kind of war hero pictures. You'll see people, and I felt, you know, really powerful at the moment, and a lot of pride of, you know, helping to liberate Kuwait. But as I walked through an exploded enemy vehicle, something on the ground caught my attention. It was just a shiny piece of paper. And I picked it up, and it was a photograph. And it was a photograph of an Iraqi soldier with his family. And at that very moment, everything changed for me. I began to, my heart sank. And as I looked and I realized this, looking at the destruction, I hoped that this man was alive, but looking at the complete destruction, my guess was nobody was. So all of my feeling of pride and passion began to change deep inside, and it became more of shame and sorrow and sadness. And 4 words kept running through my mind at that moment, things I've heard over and over again, but those 4 words were, blessed be the peacemaker. And not that I'm anti-military, but I thought, you know what's better than being for war and this, and we had to liberate Kuwait, and I was excited. I'm still proud of our military and the people who serve, and I honor and respect them. But I decided, how do I create and how do I be a peacemaker? How do I bring people who look, think, and believe differently together? And that's kind of what I began to do. And over the last 15 years, living in Japan and in Tokyo specifically, I've had an opportunity to work and connect with people from multiple different cultures, different races, and I've learned to help people get along, you might say. So I've discovered something I call the rule of harmony, and that's kind of the message I've been bringing out there, is what I call my rule of harmony, and that's what I'm passionate about. I love helping people who look, think, and believe different come together to get things done for the good in this world. And that's kind of where I am at this stage of my life today.
Wow, that's an impressive story. You know, my brother served in the Army and was in Iraq as well. And he was one of the, just a guy who always had a smile, and he's someone that just loves people. It was great with his family and his kids. And I love my brother, just didn't come back the same person. You know, it really had a tough time on him, and he's, you know, suffers a lot with mental health and things, and it's been tough. So thank you for your service, and thank you for your message on peace and helping others, and helping others communicate and learn from one another. And it just says a lot about you. So I want to segue, because We are living in very unique times, and we're broadcasting from Minnesota. We're very near the epicenter of what took place in Minneapolis and St. Paul, and not that I want to get deep into that particular topic, but where do you see today when you talk about being the peacemaker and helping people from different views communicate? What's our answer today? I mean, how do we help our politicians? How do we help our communities who are hurting and suffering? And what advice do you have? I mean, I'm sitting in front of my TV and watching the news, and I find my own mental health in just like, oh my gosh, I'm depressed. I need to get away from this because it's such a heavy subject.
Yeah, it is heavy and it's tough, and because it means so many different things to different people. And I think of people ask me, are you anti-racism? And when I answer no, they look at me for a second and go, what? What do you mean? And Mother Teresa once said, I will never go to an anti-war rally, but hold a pro-peace rally and invite me. And it's a shift of mindset about being anti-something versus being pro-something.
Yeah.
Instead of being against something where we have to fight against, we're lifting in our mind, even the subconscious mind, a negative image on somebody else's viewpoints. But if I'm pro-peace, if I'm pro-harmony, then it's about healing and finding out what common ground do we have. So instead of fighting against those who might think different than me, to be anti something, what are we pro? How are we pro-peace? And that's what I think is far more important than being anti something. I think being pro something does more good in the long run. Instead of fighting against something or going out and looking for revenge because something didn't go your way, I'm a big fan of the opposite. How do we heal that? How do we look for common ground? And also, I believe a lot of these problems begin with each person. And I talked about the rule of harmony. And for me, it's the R in rule. It's RULE. Someday I'm going to get a shirt that says I follow the rule. That's my little acronym. But R is really about taking individual responsibility for problems. And it begins with you. I think Jim Rohn once said, nothing changes until you do. Well, instead of me trying to change other people or change a system, I can look internally and say, what can I do better? How do I understand myself deeper? But more than that, how do I understand those who look, think, and believe differently than me? How can I understand them in a deeper way? And it begins with maybe a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, and a listening ear.
Responsibility is a big thing, and most of the time, unfortunately, when something goes wrong, everyone looks for someone to blame instead of going, what could I have done differently? What could I do differently now? And I always, every time I'm looking at, because I'm a firm believer that you have to fail at things, and it's okay to fail at things. Matter of fact, you might fail at a lot of things in order to get something right. You just figured out ways not to do it. So, and that you have to own them. You have to take responsibility for them. And I also feel like that, people can start over, and you're not defined by your past mistakes, and that you can change, and change is possible. And it starts with taking that responsibility.
It's going to be taking responsibility, looking into that mirror and asking, what can I do differently? What can I do better? And admitting there's a solution to every problem. It begins with oneself. But then understanding that one, even though people say one can change the world, and one, but it can't. This is where leaders who are peacemakers and change agents come into play. It takes groups of people to make a change, and a leader gets a group of people together to get something done. And that's, to me, exciting, helping leaders bring people together to get things done.
Yeah.
That excites me.
Yeah. You have a unique experience of having lived in another country. There, I think about where I grew up as an example. And I love my little hometown country. Bedford, Indiana is where I'm originally from. But most people that I grew up with have never been on an airplane, have never left their state, and so, and I think there are a lot of Americans that way, that have never been outside their own country. And so, has that experience in living outside of our country helped shape some of the views that you have today? And if so, how and what did you take away the most from living in Japan?
Yeah, I would say definitely yes, because you get to see America, even as a population, is actually less than 5% of the global population. And sometimes living inside of it, we think we're kind of the center of the globe.
Yeah.
But the truth is, we're a tiny speck in comparison. Like I said, we're less than 5% of the global population. So living abroad, you get to see how everyone else sees us. You get to see the news about America from someone else's point of view. You get to hear other people's opinions about Americans and the American culture. And sometimes it's embarrassing. And sometimes I had to go get my I Love Canada shirt on because there's some views that aren't so popular. Especially as a former soldier, there were times when traveling, I was like, yeah, I'm better with the maple leaf on my chest than I am with the USA flag. But it's also interesting to hear people's perspectives on how they grew up. And I remember one of the most telling things, and I don't know, it's not a positive thing, but it's a reality. And that was when 9/11 happened, and I was in a gym and all this news was on, and all the news from America, and someone next to me goes, man, those Americans complain a lot. And my first thought was, dude, seriously? We just lost this. And he said, yeah, I grew up in Tel Aviv. Missile attacks on a daily basis. Come on, guys, toughen up. But it was a completely different mindset. And so, yeah, it shaped a lot about, again, but at the same time, what I learned was people from any country are generally the same. Our cultures are the same. Our experiences might be different, but when a friend hurts your feelings, you get hurt. I taught an English class, and I said, what's the most happy moment of your life? And a young woman came up, a high school student, and she said, when my dad comes home from work for dinner on time. And it's the same relational things. If someone suffers loss, we grieve the same. We celebrate joy the same. Our experiences might be different, but at our core, those things that bring us joy, happiness, sadness, and frustration are almost exactly the same. And that's really what shaped me looking at how other people think about life. That you may have a unique experience, you may have a unique belief, but at your very core, the things that hurt you and the things that make you happy are probably similar to the things that make me happy. And if I can tap into that and understand that, that's when we begin to come together. That's when real change will take place. That's when we can solve problems.
Yeah. Wow. You have a really great way of communicating. I mean, you listen well, and you have a elegant way of sharing your thoughts. Where does that come from?
I don't know. I really don't. I think because I have been speaking to young people since the 1980s, again, aging myself. I think if you just do it enough, I think if you speak enough times, you just get better at it. But I also think I've had a lot of mentors who said to me, listen and don't try to be too smart. And that's easy for me because I'm not. So that was the easy part for me. But they said, just listen and listen between the lines and listen with the heart. And then there you'll find what's important and what's important to people. And I've had people teach me that. So I hopefully am able to communicate. I'm a simple person. So I try to communicate as simply as I can.
Yeah. Most people are too busy talking enough to listen. And so that I love that you shared that, listen with the heart and listen between the lines. I wrote that down. I think it's a relevant piece and something that applies to business. Many of our listeners or our viewers on this podcast are CEOs, they're executives, they're business leaders, owners, managers, entrepreneurs, salespeople. And communication is so important to that. Listening is so important to that, to how they are networking. And I'm curious, you've taken the role as a speaker, you're doing a lot of speaking in your business, and either in person or online events and things of that nature. And, they say that speaking is like the number one fear. I mean, when you poll people, fear of speaking is like number one over spiders and over falling and heights and over snakes, which is my biggest fear. Snakes. I hate snakes. And then even death, like speaking is number one. So what advice do you have for people that either have been afraid to speak, but they have a story to share, or that they want to get started, but they don't know how?
And I think too, it's even the image of speaking, because when someone asked me, are you a professional speaker? I had the mindset that speakers were Tony Robbins, and that's all that was. Yeah. So I think a lot of time when people hear public speaking, they think of that guy or that girl on the big giant stage with thousands of people in the auditorium and the lights are flashing and you're going to just screw something up totally. And I think you got to shift the word from speaking to communicator, because one of the things in the speaking industry that was taught to me that I love is they say, speak to one, look to all. And when you're creating a talk, I think it was Craig Valentine, I think it was him or one of his proteges who said it, but does it pass the hallway test? Does your talk pass the hallway test? Meaning you and I are talking today one-to-one, and can this same message now be applied to 1,000 or 1,000,000? If I'm a business owner, an entrepreneur, I don't need to worry about public speaking. Just speak to one. Share your story with a one person like you would at a coffee table. Now, if there happens to be 10 people at the coffee table, just talk to one and look to all. So begin to change the mindset from being a speaker to a communicator, so you can learn to shape your story and your business's story. Talk to from your heart about your business, and then you can kind of edit and clean up the content and things like that if you have to get on the stage or want to. But begin to talk to one or two people. It doesn't have to. We talk about the elevator pitch and the 60-second things, and don't start with 60 seconds. Just share your story, and if you have someone there, record that thing. And now you can clean it up and edit it down to make it fun and exciting. But begin with your heart and begin with sharing your story with one person. Because if you can share your story with one person with confidence, you can share it with 10, with 1,000. Because it's you and it's your story. Speak to one, but look to all. I would say start with changing that mindset. I'm not a speaker. I'm a communicator of my business and my story. And begin with a coffee table conversation. And try that. And, and to be honest, one of the best ways to do it is in those opportunities at the AGC meetings. This is where you get to meet people after and before, which is so much fun. But this is where your story begins to take shape as you tell it to different people and you get that feedback. Because sooner or later you can get on the AGC stage and you can share, but you're going to say the same thing you did. You just get to say it to more people.
Yeah, I like it. You're typically, when you're speaking, what's the average length of your talks, your speeches, and so on? Because we restrict really tight. Like ours is very format. The AGC stage experience is very formatted like a TED Talk. So you're in that 15 to 17 minutes, and we really narrow in. Like, okay, here's your clock, and here you go. But what's the average for you, and was that difficult for you? I mean, we'd like to know what was your experience like on the other side of the mic on the stage at an AGC event?
Well, I actually love that, because like I said, I grew up in the Young Life methodology, and your talks to high school kids were less than 15 minutes. That was what they taught us. You get one point, make it done really well, and don't bore these high school kids. So get it done in 10 to 15 minutes or less. So, and I'm in a Toastmaster group, and Toastmaster speeches are 7 minutes. So 15 minutes for me is like, yeah, 2 Toastmaster talks. I love this. And it's a Young Life talk. So for me personally, I love it. When someone says, can you speak for 45 minutes? I'm like, do I have to? So because I like those. So for me, I love the AGC style because I think it's concise, it's powerful, it's impactful. It takes more work. As Winston Churchill once said, someone asked him, do you want to speak? And he says, when do you want, how long do you want me to speak? If you want me for 2 hours, I'm ready today. If you want, 10 minutes, give me 2 weeks to prepare. There's more preparation time in a shorter speech, but I really enjoy it personally because I think the world we live in today is sound bites. And
Yes.
I'm happy to do the 45-minute keynotes, but if someone allows me to do 30 or less, I'm even happier personally. I just really I love the AGC stage because, and for a speaker's point of view, you guys rock a video. And if someone's a newer speaker or an entrepreneur who wants to use speaking as a marketing tool, speaking is not just for going out and main staging big stages and big conferences. It's probably one of the best ways to market your business is by selling value or giving value to many people. Go up to an association stage and wow them with some value, and everyone's going to be back at your table saying, I need more, sell me something. And it's the same thing on the AGC stage. You get to present value to a whole bunch of people who are also business people who might be the perfect customer for your business. And if they're not, as they say in 6 Degrees of Separation, they'll probably know who is. And so that's a great place to go, because I have a YouTube video and someone says, do you have anything of you speaking? Yeah, I do. I got a great video from AGC that I send all over the place. And just by the way, Travis had picked me up a gig the other day. So they were able, they saw
fantastic.
that, and someone said, I saw you speaking. I saw your video and we'd like to talk to you about coming down to talk to our company. So I'm in the process of negotiating that as we speak, but it came directly off my AGC stage. That video helped me win some stuff. So if you want to get more business, get in that AGC stage.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that with me. That just made my day. There's nothing that excites me more than being able to help make some type of connection, whether it's a relationship or a new piece of business or something for our members, for our speakers, for our community inside AGC. And you're absolutely right about the time, and because I look at my background, I was a magician for over 10 years of my life, and I performed professionally on major stages all across the country. And I would always, I started out doing small stuff. I mean, you talked about what was it earlier, where you're a motivational speaker. I've lost who you mentioned, but they didn't start out with big auditoriums full of people, so I started out with small living rooms, birthday party kids, and worked up to those big stages. But the parents would always want to book this long show for a birthday, and I'm like, no, there's a reason why that cartoons are 30 minutes long. They can't hold the attention any longer than that. It's got to go to something new, something different. And now when TED Talks came out, they figured it out. I really think so. I mean, because people will watch something for 15 minutes, but if they're on their lunch break and they're on their mobile device and they're trying to check it out, they're probably not going to sit there for an hour. And if they do want to sit there for an hour, they could binge watch 4 of those talks in that time frame. And then you take even a shorter. Instagram only allows 1-minute video, and then Facebook has 37 seconds for their ads. So you've got to capture attention, you got to capture it fast, and if you don't, you won't keep them very long. So that's really, really good to know. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
But to your point though too, is that every AGC member, to develop their own ability, should look at speaking and communicating as part of their personal development to share their brand and their story.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Now I want to let our audience know also how to find you, because you've shared a lot. And I mean, we're just in this 30-minute podcast, You've shared a lot of really insightful things, and I really love your style, and would love to help you get more of those gigs through AGC. And so, first of all, it's Steve Donofrio. Did I get it
There we
right this
go.
time?
Hey.
Hey, all right, awesome. It only takes me a few times. I'll get it right eventually. And you have a website. Tell us how to find you.
So it's boostconfidencenow.com. And that's where you can get in contact me if you want some specific things. We're kind of really about, like I said, leadership and bringing people together and helping, those frontline for businesses. It's about your frontline leaders. It's about those supervisors. It's building leaders who bring people together to get things done. It's kind of our way to do it. And for young people, it's about boosting confidence and helping them learn how to be peacemakers and global change makers and global change agents. That's You're going to see me more at AGC. I think one of the big community projects I'm getting involved with now is the Karen community. They're an indigenous peoples group out of Myanmar. They're People Without Borders, and they have a really big refugee population in St. Paul and Minneapolis. And I'm part of the Karen Football Association. And one of my the email you sent talked about success stories.
Yes.
Success stories to me are when I talk to some of their football or soccer players and about pro mindsets. And some of the successes for me is 4 or 5 days later getting an email from a young player who says, I've changed the way I practice. I've changed the way I look at my personal life, and I'm going to start doing things better. Here's my new schedule that includes my study time and my training time and more self-discipline. That to me is the greatest success. And one of the things KFA just did is create an ad agency called KFA Digital. And the founder of KFA and some of his folks they have 30 years in the branding industry and combined. And they've branded for some of the biggest companies. And they've taken that and created a digital ad agency where they bring on immigrant, minority, young women and young men and make them apprentices in digital marketing. So a company who says, I need some branding. I need my webpage cleaned up. I need cool video. I'm a real estate person. I want someone to wow me with a video tour of this house. But you know what? I also want to make a social impact. I want to make a change. KFA Digital is designed to do that. You get to pay KFA Digital for some amazing stuff. And then you know that the people doing it are some young men and women. That doesn't mean the quality is low, because nothing passes out until these experts have approved it. So there's a time lag to it because you've got young people trying and learning, but the quality will be what you see in Google, Best Buy, everywhere else. You'll get that quality when it's done because the experts don't let it go out. And these young men and women who maybe once lived in a refugee camp are now part of a marketing ad agency, and now they're building a resume and they're doing that. So being part of that in our community. And so I am going to be joining AGC with KFA Digital this next year. And we're excited to bring the Karen community. And I can't wait to have a few of these kids with me at a couple of these meetings and introduce them and their stories. And that to me is exciting. I can't wait to be part of AGC with the Karen family and introducing the members of AGC to the Karen community.
Well, thank you for sharing that. We've had a few of our college age kids come to AGC events, and this happened at a Minneapolis event not horribly long ago. It was in the winter, and they had an assignment. Like, they had to go to a networking event, and they had to take some notes on the things that were happening and what they learned from the experience and some of the conversations that they had, and bring it back to their professor and share the experience. And they found us online Google somehow, and came to our event. And it was just so cool to see, especially because when I was in school, they didn't teach networking in college. They didn't teach any of that. And so now some of the professors are instilling some of that into the youth, which is awesome. And you hit on something that I made a note on earlier, and I want to ask your thoughts or advice on this because you've now mentioned it for the second time, and that's mindset. And you've mindset is so important. So I'm curious, as if we're wanting, because everyone gets in, even the most positive people can sometimes have that stinking thinking, that self-doubt that creeps in. And I heard recently that business owners and executives are often people who suffer from mental health the most.
Mm.
And because they're always leading everyone else, they're not taking enough time for their own self-care. And so, what advice do you have on how do you get your mindset right? Like, how do you start your day? What stays relevant for you that keeps your mindset in the right place? What can we learn from that?
One thing I do is accept that we all have those days that we have a negative mindset and we get into the lulls, and it's okay. Just to give myself permission to whine and complain to myself once in a while. Two is I don't like to say don't make excuses, because again, to me it comes off really negative. And so, hey, stop making excuses. To me, it's almost like you feel bad, like I'm doing something wrong, because an excuse could still be a real roadblock or a real problem. And I do something I call practicing proactive positivity. It's easier to do than it is to say so many times. But basically, it's in the morning when I get up, I decide that today's going to be a good day because, and I give myself a list. So I set myself up looking for what's going to be positive in my day. Today's going to be a good day because I'm going to be doing ABC. I expect to do this. And I also, when it comes to people I know, I ask myself, what can I say or do today to encourage one person? Maybe it's an email, maybe it's somebody at work, maybe it's just a positive affirmation. It doesn't matter. What can I do or say to encourage or uplift one human being today? And at the end of the day, I say why. I tell myself today was a good day because, and I go back and I look at why all the pot, and I keep my mind continually looking and forcing my subconscious now to bring up things that are positive, because I set myself in the morning. I do at least one affirmation to someone else during the day, and then at night I remind myself why today was a good day. And so there might have been a lot of things going wrong. I might have missed a bunch of things, but I force myself before I sleep to say today was a good day because, and I find that one thing before I fall asleep, and I'm hoping I can wake up and say, you know what, tomorrow. So I call it practicing proactive positivity, and that's one of the ways I keep, and I encourage people to have a positive mindset, and have a mindset that's flexible, meaning you're open to change, you're open to growth. Carol Dweck, in her book Mindset, says there's two mindsets: a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. And I think we just have to, again, going back to our very beginning, if you want to be a peacemaker, if you want to understand people, you have to take responsibility and be the change. Well, in order for me to be a change, I have to have a growth mindset. I have to have a mindset that says, I have to sometimes look at myself and admit I make mistakes. But then I also have to admit that someone else makes mistakes too. So if I, how are we doing on time, Travis? I don't want to go.
Oh, yeah, no, you're good. We're gonna finish that thought, and then
well, good. I'm going to share one last story
Sure.
about how that goes on mindset and how you look at somebody. And when I first got to Japan, I couldn't speak any Japanese, but I was excited to greet my English class in Japanese. And so I was like so excited. I'm like, yeah, I got to figure out what to say. And I wanted to say, good to see you. I wanted to meet you. Happy, good to see you today. Good to see you. Glad you're in my class. Good to see you. I looked up the word to see, and I learned it meant to literally look at. And I thought, well, that'd be really weird if I said I wanted to look at you today. So I looked up the word meet, and it's the word to meet you. I wanted to meet you. And I thought, well, this will work perfect. So I looked it up. I looked how to transform the verb, and it was aitakata, meaning literally translated, I wanted to meet you. And I thought, that's perfect. That's what I wanted to say. Good to see you. Glad you're in class today. Oh, I was looking forward to seeing you. So I practiced it myself. I did my thing, and I practiced and And finally the day came, and my class started coming in. I began to say it. And the first few people looked at me like I was crazy. They looked at me like, what? And I'm like, oh man, this pronunciation's not working. I got to get it better. And so I practiced. I made some adjustments. A couple more people came in. They smiled. And then I finally got a couple people to say it back to me. And I was so excited because two people with excitement said it back to me. And I was like, nailed it. I was so happy. Ran back after my class to the nonprofit I worked for. And I told my group, hey guys, I used Japanese today. You should be proud of me. And everybody said, what did you say? And I said, aitakata. And a hush fell over the room. And I'm like, they said, what did you say? I said, aitakata. Huh? I said, is my pronunciation wrong? No, they said, you did pretty good. They said, Steve, what room was this? And I said, my English class. Steve, quick question, boys or girls? And I thought, uh-oh, this is not going the way I wanted to. You should be excited about me. I said, it's mostly girls, college students and young professional women. They said, oh, how did that go? And I said, at first it was hard, but I said, I got better as it went on. They said, well, more specifically, did anyone say it back to you? And I said, yes, 2 people actually responded back. I said, I was hoping for more. They said, oh, hey, Steve, does your wife know that you may have 2 new girlfriends? And I said, what? They said, Steve, the word aitakata means, hey, honey, I'm glad we're together. I missed you. And I said, no, it doesn't. It means I wanted to meet you. They said, yes, but culturally, it's used between significant others or a special relationship. I've missed you is more of the nuance of that word. And I'm like, dictionary should come with warning labels, because they don't. My Japanese English dictionary had no warning label. But what my point is with this is we have to show other people who maybe have a second language, a third language, who struggle with the English language, their dictionaries may not come with a warning label. Other people may be trying to do what's right and make a mistake. And having a mindset of positivity says, I'm going to accept mistakes in others. Maybe they weren't the most cultural sensitive thing. Maybe they made a mistake. I spoke last year last year at a Black History event. It was a mother-daughter African-American Black History event. They invited me to speak. And I'm like, you understand, I'm the white guy. And the lady who brought me in was an amazing woman. And she goes, yeah, I want to do something different. She goes, so come in and speak on that. Give us the rule of harmony. But I remember having a first coffee with her. I actually went on Google and looked up what not to say to your African-American women friends, because I was so afraid of making mistakes. But a mindset of positivity says it's okay. Let people make mistakes and grow together and laugh about them. I can laugh about asking for dates now in Japan. Yeah. But other people try really hard and they're afraid as well. We got to let people make the mistakes in our conversations about peace, our conversations about overcoming problems, in our conversations with one another. Yeah, we all come from different places. It's okay if we make a mistake. It's about trying and getting better every time in a conversation. That's, I think, what pro mindset means to me.
Wow. Thank you so much for such great stories, such great advice. Thank you for sharing with us. You've been an awesome guest. And if you're looking to get in touch with Steve Donofrio, please reach out to him at boostconfidencenow.com and find out what he's up to. Follow him there. If you're interested in having him speak, reach out to him. He'd love to talk to you. And at this time, I'm just going to address our audience real quickly and say thank you so much for staying with us all the way through to the end. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you for listening. Thank you for hitting the subscribe button. Please, if you enjoyed today's podcast and you know someone that could benefit, if you know someone that maybe is already the peacemaker and wants to listen to this, if you know someone that maybe is struggling with their mindset, if you know someone that just as a business person, as an entrepreneur, or just a human, just please share this with them, make an impact on them, and help us reach a new person with this podcast. Thank you, guys. We'll see you all next time, next week.